Bună dimineața și bun găsit la o nouă ediție BU. Sunt Sabina Iosub și astăzi o să vorbim puțin despre vize. De ce? Păi sunt două state în Uniunea Europeană, România și Bulgaria, unde încă mai au nevoie cetățenilor de vize pentru Statele Unite și pentru Canada. Când și cum se rezolvă această problemă, aflăm în clipele următoare.
Includerea în programul Visa Waiver este un obiectiv pe care România îl va aborda intensiv de la începutul anului viitor, anunță autoritățile române. Guvernul așteaptă alegerile prezidențiale de peste ocean pentru a relua procesul de negociere. Din punctul de vedere al americanilor însă, România pur și simplu nu îndeplinește încă toate condițiile pentru eliminarea restricțiilor de călătorie. Una dintre probleme este rata de refuz. Prin lege, Statele Unite nu pot include în programul Visa Waiver țări unde ambasada respinge peste 3% dintre solicitările de viză. În ceea ce privește situația vizelor pentru Canada, lucrurile stau mai bine. Autoritățile canadiene au anunțat că vor stabili în septembrie foaia de parcurs privind eliminarea acestui sistem de vize. Presa de peste ocean scrie că România și Bulgaria și-ar putea folosi dreptul de veto pentru a bloca semnarea acordului de liber schimb dintre Canada și Uniunea Europeană, tocmai din cauza menținerii restricțiilor pentru cetățenii din aceste țări. Iar Bruxelles e de partea noastră. Toți cetățenii din blocul comunitar trebuie să poată să călătorească fără opreliști în Statele Unite ale Americii și Canada, spune Comisia Europeană. Uniunea a dat un termen de 24 de luni Canadei și Statelor Unite ale Americii pentru a renunța la vize, după ce în 2014 mai multe state, printre care și România, au depus notificări în acest sens. Însă, în prezent, regimul vizelor e aplicat de Canada pentru România și Bulgaria și de Statele Unite pentru români, polonezi, croați, bulgari și ciprioți.
Today here with me in the European Parliament are Madam Eva Paunova from Bulgaria. Thank you for being with me today.
Hello.
And Mr. Sorin Moisa from Romania. Thank you so much.
Hello.
We have a situation in our countries regarding the visas for our citizens. Visas for Canada and United States. Why do you think this is valid or only for Romanians and Bulgarians?
Well, first of all, when it comes to the visas for the US, it's not just Bulgaria and Romania, but actually 3 other countries, Cyprus included, and Poland as well, and Croatia. We're confronted with a little bit of, how to call it, maybe a vicious circle when it comes to US visas, because the current situation, especially for Bulgaria, is as follows. We are very good partners with the US on a number of topics, but in the same time, it is very difficult for the Bulgarians to reach the threshold that has been put by the US government of 3% rejection of visa. Currently, the percentage of rejected visas to Bulgarians is above 12%, and it varies throughout the different years. So we think it's the answer should come from the US side in terms of lowering this threshold, and actually, you know, the 3% should get to maybe 10% in order for Bulgarians to be able to enjoy visa-free travel.
Is it the same situation in Romania?
Well, yes, roughly it is the same situation. The rejection rates vary slightly. The context the cause for this situation is more or less historical. We ended up in this situation being sort of laggards in terms of rejection rates together with Poland. I mean, this is important, another important new member state of the EU that needs visas for the US. And there were some other Central Eastern European EU member states who were fortunate. There was a relatively brief period during which the US has lowered the threshold to a more reasonable level, and those countries managed to be in the visa waiver program, whereas Poland, Romania, Bulgaria remained still outside. For Canada, however, and there are significant differences between Canada and the US, the threshold is also there, but it's part of a larger number of technical criteria for introducing these countries in visa. I mean, any country in the world, in fact, in the Canadian visa waiver regime. The criteria are not in the law, they are administrative criteria created by the Canadian government, one of these criteria being the rejection rate. Now, a big difference between Canada and the US is that with Canada we are, I believe, on the brink of solving the issue. I have a telephone conversation tonight with Minister John McCallum, the Canadian Immigration Minister. And which is not the first conversation, we have been having conversations since March this year, when I first met him in Ottawa. It's a relatively complex and complicated story having to do with reciprocity issues, with CETA, the free trade agreement that we have negotiated with Canada, for which I used to be rapporteur in my group before I resigned following the Canadian visa row. And
it was a strong signal that you gave.
I had worked very loyally as a genuine Atlanticist with the Canadian government, negotiating CETA, and then when I was in the European Commission, and then making it votable, acceptable, palatable for the European Parliament once the Trudeau government came to power. And I did take issue with the attitude of a single Canadian ministry on this issue, which was a bit of it became, unfortunately, an issue of national dignity, and I had no choice but to do what I did. However, I believe we are about to have a solution made public the coming days, and it would cover Bulgaria as well, as far as I know and hope. We need to look into the terms. I don't know the details. I think it's going in the right direction, and I hope we will be able to have breaking news, good breaking news in a matter of days. Anyway, in the coming weeks, there is a major issue with the endorsement by the Council of CETA, the free trade agreement between the EU and Canada. And if this problem is not solved, we are going to have major difficulties. And then CETA will come up for the vote in the European Parliament early next year.
Very important. I would just like to add and restate a little bit. The visa regimes for Bulgarian and Romanian citizens to Canada, as well as to US, the regimes and the way they work are very different from one another. And this is why it's very probable to have different moves by the two governments. I also expect, from the information I have received from the Canadian ambassador to the EU just a day ago, that in the coming days, even earlier than October probably, we would have news on what's the timeline going to be for the visa waiver program for Bulgarian and Romanian nationals.
Let's hope that what is written in the agreement, let's say, it will be in our favor, because we know that it has been such a long way till this moment. And you've mentioned the moment of your resignation in a sign of protest regarding the treatment that was applied to Bulgaria and especially to Romania. You have also made a letter and you've written to the Prime Minister of Canada explaining the situation and also protesting for this situation. What was back then, the reaction?
Well, I received a very nice and polite reply from Prime Minister Trudeau saying that he had the letter had been reviewed very carefully, and that the ministers in copy, and he copied two of his ministers, the Trade Minister and the Immigration Minister, with whom I was already in contact, are giving due consideration to the matter. So it was a polite, positive, while measured reply. I mean, he did not say, yes, I'm going to deal with this in a couple of weeks, but he indicated a positive dynamic and a positive direction, copying his ministers with whom I have been working on the issue ever since.
But see, this is one thing, because you're sitting here with two members of the European Parliament, and I see very much our role in reinforcing our government's position and what our citizens want, and really fight and stand behind what is in the best interest of our citizens. Yes, we are not the people that can sign those agreements, but we can be also a facilitator and an important part, because we've been, after all, elected by our citizens, not just to work on EU legislation, but also together in the delegations where we are part of, to fight for these very important matters for our EU citizens. And I think this is a very good sign also what Mr. Moise is saying and has done so far. I think we're going more and more in the right direction because of the power of the European Parliament and the way members are regarded. And it is very good when we are able also to involve our national governments and combine our positions and be on the same standpoint when we approach our transatlantic partners.
If I just may, there's a nuance there. We, the two of us, are the people who will vote on the CETA treaty or not. Maybe, I mean, according to our own individual judgment and conscience, depending on also
yes.
on the way Canada would have managed this issue.
Absolutely, yes.
You are coming to my next question. You have this ace in your hand, the CETA treaty. Will this treaty be CETA blocked if the Canadians are saying, okay, let's see exactly what we should do in the next period, not having a straight answer for us?
I mean,
I know it's a difficult question.
It is a difficult question.
Yes
Actually,
no?
I mean, it would be really very difficult for the Romanian government. With, by the way, along the lines that Eva already suggested, I have also been very closely working with the Romanian government. Well, I happen to also have very close contacts there. I have been working with most of the key people there and the Prime Minister in the past. It's public knowledge.
Yeah.
I mean, we really were a dream team on this issue, and I think we have managed it very well. And it would really be difficult for the Romanians to sign CETA in a few weeks' time if this issue has not been solved in a reasonable way. And by reasonable, I mean removing the visa regime for this year already. I mean, we might have a calendar announced, but the calendar has to be good as well. I mean, if the calendar is ad calendas grecas, that's not good enough, even if we have a calendar tonight. So we need a solution, and I know it would be really very difficult, despite all the strategic considerations, after this row that we have been having with Canada, to endorse CETA, because, I mean, after all, a partnership is a two-way street. Dignity is a two-way street. We are very loyal partners. I mean, the current Prime Minister has also negotiated CETA and has worked on it as a commissioner. I have done that. I have worked on restructuring CETA after the Trudeau government was elected with Chrystia Freeland, the trade minister, to make it acceptable politically, democratically in Europe, more acceptable. We do expect, within reason, with all the sort of proportionality and decency that one can have, that Canada also behaves in a dignified manner towards our citizens. So yes, it would be very difficult for the Romanian government to endorse it. It would be very difficult for me to vote on it and to suggest, to urge my colleagues to also endorse CETA in the European Parliament early next year, probably, when we have the vote. But I'm already working on the working assumption that the problem will be solved, and then I can also come back as CETA rapporteur for my group and fight this fight, which is going to be the mother of all fights, as I think I put it on a discussion with the Canadian journalists in the coming months.
Yeah. No, but Bulgaria's position is very clear. It will be very difficult to do and approve CETA if we do not have visa reciprocity. It would be probably impossible to explain that to our citizens and, most importantly, to our businesses. I mean, how are you going to do trade when you're not granted visa-free travel? So it's a very basic thing that has to be done in order for us to say, fine, we would vote and approve CETA. And I think if we don't have very clear timeline and a very concrete one that we can approve in the coming weeks, I don't see how we can support CETA.
In the visas for US case, we don't have such a CETA, let's say, such a ace in our hands. What can we do in this situation?
And what we can do is, in my case, and I'm sure Eva has been doing her own bit as well, what we can do, and I have already begun doing, is working with people who are likely to be key players in the next Congress. There are elections in the US, to make sure we pass, or the US Congress passes legislation lowering the threshold or amending the conditions for the granting of the visa waiver in a way that would allow Romania in particular, but all the EU member states to benefit from the visa waiver. In a very, very difficult context, which goes both ways. You know, there's Trumpism and all this madness with the, fighting, about
everything.
migrate, exactly,
Yeah.
fighting everything, immigrants in particular. In the same time, there is very serious consideration in the US about stepping up security controls and checks, even on citizens belonging to countries that already travel visa-free because of terrorism issues. I mean, if you take, the Belgian and French cases in terms of, potential risks, there is a decent argument to be made that our countries might be safer from that point of view. So we might end up with a new package deal with a new U.S. Congress, sort of averaging the two things, and maybe there will be a harsher regime on visa waiver countries in general. But our countries really, with all, again, proportionality and decency, there's no rational reason why we would not be there, whereas Hungary, Poland, Slovakia, Belgium, Portugal, France, our colleagues in the EU are already in. So this is what we should be doing, and this is what I purport to do, and I have already begun working on that. Work with key people in the US to pass legislation to make sure this happens. This is the big difference from Canada. In the US, there's legislation, even if Obama himself wanted to wake up tomorrow and grant us visa free travel to the US, he cannot do that. There's no presidential decree, or there's a better word for that in English, that he can pass in order to grant this. It's the Nationality and Immigration Act, so that's sacred. It needs to go through Congress. In Canada, it's very different because it's more of an administrative decision, and the criteria are created by the government in light of very general legislation.
Yeah. That's what I also said, that they're, just a very... it's always about the visa, but the essence, how this could be granted and on what basis, is very different. I have to say that myself, my MEP colleagues, as well as our government, every time we meet with our American partners, this is always on the table. The visa topic. It's there and it's discussed. Throughout the past years, we have went through a number of steps getting closer to visa liberalization. We have established common areas and agreements in the terms of security, terrorism, Islamization, anti-corruption. We have a new agreement with Interpol when it comes to lost passports and how to locate them and return them. So a number of points where we are working and cooperating on a daily basis have been achieved. So Bulgaria, on one hand, is regarded as a very strong ally and partner to the US, and it is only natural that we will be able to travel freely. But to a very big extent, the ball is into the court of our US partners, because, as I said, it is a bit of a vicious circle. I mean, 3% rejection of visa apparently cannot be reached, and it's the US that determines that. It's not us. We cannot tell to our citizens, do not go to apply for visas. It's just not going to happen. And it's also their criteria. And who knows exactly how this number is determined. So it's very important. And there were certain steps taken into the direction of hiring this threshold up to 10% instead of the current 3%, which is more likely that it could be met rather than 3%, which seems to be a very a number which is difficult to reach.
We are feeling in the European Union, because of such things, we Romanians and Bulgarians, we're feeling like the poor brother, let's say, or the poor sister, being always looked up, let's say, Mr. Moisa.
Well, you could make the same argument, at least in this case, about the Poles, about the Cypriots,
Cyprus and Croatians
and
as
the
well.
Croats. It is, but
yeah, but if we are looking also at the Eurobarometer, every month Romania and Bulgaria is at the end, and putting all these together makes situation of the citizen in Romania and Bulgaria different from the other states? What should be done?
But in the Eurobarometer, as regarding what? Exactly?
Regarding the situation, the economic situation,
okay.
let's say, the situation of development, let's say, and putting all these in the same basket takes us to
probably this does reflect realities in the end. I mean, we were probably the poorest two countries in Europe, and this is something we need to address. And I think we have been addressing. Our economies have been growing now for a generation. I mean, I'm going to be very frank. You can be very, excessively patriotic about these things. I don't want to be. I mean, there is prejudice in Brussels. That's true, and I have sensed that. But I come back to our own sort of contribution to this issue. On the visa issue with Canada, I mean, just to stick to this example, it's not that I believe. I do know with precision that the European Commission and a number of the key services in the European External Action Service have not been exactly, how should I put it, loyal, correct. They could have done more in terms of having the lever of our own reciprocity legislation. We haven't discussed this. It's a painful subject. I might sort of briefly mention it. They could have done more. To me, they clearly prioritized the interests and sensitivities of our partners over the interests and sensitivities of their own citizens, Romanians, Bulgarians, Poles with the US. I mean, I'm not suggesting it would be insane to have a visa war with the US and Canada and to impose visas for the entire EU population because of Bulgarians and Romanians to our US partners. I mean, we need to look at the bigger picture. We need them for other things.
And to look at the business and the trade.
And the security dimension for the Romanians anyway, that's very, very important. So we need to look at the big picture. Nevertheless, we could have done this abandonment of our reciprocity policy with more dignity. We haven't done that. Actually, there are European officials who signal to the Canadians and the Americans, don't worry, for these guys, we're not going to sort of pass a certain red line. That's not okay. That said, I think, I mean,
we're members of the EU just like all the other 28 member states.
That said, it sometimes happens too that our own governments, and by that I don't necessarily mean ministers, and I don't want to point at anybody in particular, or prime ministers and so on, but it's true, and this is the thing that might seem controversial, but it's not. We could have a more sophisticated public administration that would perform better in Brussels, at home, would be better with, would create more, a better reputation for itself. For instance, by building those bloody motorways and absorbing EU money. And I mean, reputation is something that is not only granted to you by others, it's something that you build yourself by simply being yourself, by being good, by being happy in your own skin. And that is something that we still need to do ourselves. So this is our bit of the story. So, we shouldn't victimize ourselves, but it's true that there is prejudice in Brussels. However, we could, it's not generalized, it's, and it's something we could sort of deal with ourselves by being, competitive, by being good, by being, happy in the way we are being good. Yeah.
Let's do this in the next period. Thank you so much.
Very important, I think, and I want to have an appeal because every time you get this sort of data, it's frustrating and it's not good. And as much as, governments or institutions have to address these challenges, it's up to every one of us to address these challenges, every citizen of Bulgaria, of Romania, to know what they can do for their country, for their European Union. How can we change perceptions? And even better, how can we change data? And when there is good statistic, because in the past year, Bulgaria has been one of the 3 countries where unemployment went down from 9.7%, which is still a very low number compared to other countries where unemployment is at 25%, down to 7.2%. That's a huge margin. When you get something positive, look at it and say, okay, we have also positive data, be proud of it, and use it in the right way to stimulate, the economy, the people. I have to say that I also think it's very important for our institutions to be very firm and very clear in what we want and stand behind it. And just in the past days and months, I mean, there has been a big inflow of migrants at the Bulgarian-Turkish border. Our government had a very clear stance, said we are protecting our external borders, but it is very difficult to do that alone. We would like to receive support by our EU partners. It has been stated a number of times, and this support was granted. So it's about working together and having understanding for each other's problems. And if we are stronger, our countries as well as others, it helps the whole EU. So it's not just about one or two countries, it's about being strong together.
Thank you so much both for being with me today, and let's hope that in the next days we'll have that breaking news that you've said, that the visas are not longer valid for citizens in Bulgaria and Romania, in case of Canada, of course. Thank you so much for being with me. Iar vouă celor de acasă vă spun să rămâneți pe Antena 3. Ne revedem sâmbătă viitoare la 9:30.